Let's keep talking about the Biden-Xi summit. How was it perceived in China? And what is the mood in China more generally these days? I'm joined by Cindy Yu, a careful China watcher who is an assistant editor at The Spectator and hosts the Chinese Whispers podcast. Welcome, Cindy. So Kevin Rudd was saying he thought that the economy and the state of the economy was the principal motivator behind Xi's sort of course correction. You were in China recently. Do you get the sense that people are anxious about the economy there?
I think so, very much so. There's a bit of a long tail of economic recovery that's happening in China. Instead of this post-COVID bounce where everything just comes back because lockdowns were ended this time last year, it's actually been a long schlep this year, where, you know, when I was in China over the summer, no matter who I spoke to, whether it was your local taxi person or a high-ranking businessman in Shanghai, the story was very much the same. Don't feel economically secure right now, don't feel confident in the state of the country. And so people are being very, very careful about what they're spending money on, about their views for the future. If they're making business decisions, they're holding off for now. And so I think basically what we're seeing is that the last 3 years of zero COVID, they don't go past that quickly. You know, they don't just disappear. People are a bit traumatized, and their wallets and their bank accounts certainly are not as healthy as they were in 2019. And so in China, confidence, consumer confidence is very much low at the moment, and I think that's manifesting itself in all sorts of ways.
So the statistic that I've been struck by looking at is if you look at 2019, first 6 months of 2019, 8.5 million tourists visit China. First 6 months of 2023, it's about 500,000. So there's this dramatic fall off, and it feels like part of a larger story of China that was once very integrated into the world, closing itself off. Did you see some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, during the pandemic in particular, there were moments where it felt like Chinese people were quite suspicious of foreigners even. There was one point where they thought foreigners were the ones bringing COVID into China. And so there was really this feeling of, ooh, we're not sure about that one, and we don't want to go out there when COVID is not being controlled in the rest of the world. It's easy to forget how quickly that regime has gone, that zero COVID regime, only last December, so less than a year ago. And so people's mentality will take a little bit longer to shift, I think. That's a psychological part of it. There's also an economic, practical part, which is just that direct flights. Some of those ones that were cancelled during the pandemic haven't been resumed, and that's why it was one of the things on the agenda for Xi and Biden this week. And so I think these things take time. It will go back to the kind of globalized way that we were getting used to in the early noughties and 2010s, but it will take some time, and it also depends on geopolitics. I haven't met very many Western tourists who want to go to China because China's reputation is so shot from 3 years of zero COVID. So, yeah, we'll have to see, basically.
Interesting. Now, when you look at the way China is playing the Biden-Xi visit, it is back to normal in the sense of good relations, friendly. The Americans and the Chinese are great friends. None of that old suspicion. They're marveling that Joe Biden liked the Chinese car that Xi was driving. Do you think that this is all a very concerted state effort to shift the narrative?
Absolutely. I mean, this APEC summit has been in the planning for months now. And as Kevin Rudd said, ever since February, the spy balloon incidents, both sides have been kind of thinking, how do we pull this side? How do we pull this back? And the Americans have been making more overtures going to China over the summer, but the Chinese have been preparing for this as well. You know, they have been looking forward to this November summit. And you see that in state media over the summer, over the course of the last few months, there's been this shift where instead of America doing everything wrong, it's how did the Chinese and Americans collaborate during the Second World War? You know, what kind of other things, like Elon Musk? You know, got a great American businessman. We like Elon Musk. And then from this particular summit, one of the things that's going viral is Biden showing Xi Jinping a photo of Xi Jinping from San Francisco from 38 years ago. And, you know, this kind of chumminess is going viral on Chinese social media. So it is all quite carefully curated. But I think for the Chinese people, for public opinion, as much as we can generalize about 1.4 billion people, you know, generally speaking, it's not an anti-Americanism deep-seated one. it tends to be very much kind of riled up or dampened down by state narratives. So how deeply that kind of anti-Americanism is, I think we see from here that actually is not too deep. But it is important to say that in the Chinese portrayal of the event, it's always Xi, front and center. It's always Xi saying, I don't believe in a second Cold War, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. And Biden is a supportive actor. So I think that prioritization is still important to keep in mind.
In other words, it is a communist country with a supreme leader.
Absolutely, yes.
When you were in China in the summer, were there things that struck you as different in post-COVID China that surprised you? Like, give us a kind of a feel for the place.
Yeah, so I thought there would be way more COVID signs. I don't know what it's like in the US, but certainly in the UK, there are still these kind of legacies from COVID, social distancing posters and that kind of stuff that remind you of that era. In a lot of the places that I went to in China, in Beijing, Shanghai, and Nanjing, another city, all of those were gone. So, the COVID infrastructure, I was shocked by how quickly it left. But what shocked me even more than that was the amount of surveillance there is in China now compared to when the last time I was there 4 years ago in 2019. And I'm not saying this is government surveillance, but it's the technology behind those CCTV cameras, facial recognition that private companies, as well as local governments, have taken and run away with, such that you'll be driving down a really long road in a major city in China and cameras will be flashing at you every now and then. Not because you're speeding, but because they just want to know who's in what car. If I go and commit an armed robbery, they will be able to track me down very quickly because of the amount of data that's been created by this nexus of private companies, local governments and central government. So I thought that was just so interesting how prevalent that technological advancement has happened in China, where, as we know, it's a country where when change happens very fast.
And do you feel as though there is a sense of relief that relations with the U.S. are better? Or, in other words, what was the underlying condition for people, for ordinary people?
Definitely, because we talk about the Chinese economy slowing, and in the West it's easy to think, oh, well, that's because the CCP has screwed it up. They've done something wrong. But actually, a lot of Chinese people thought, it's the Americans having their boot on our neck. Why are they at us? Why are they trying to contain us? And so good relations with America has been welcomed on social media, at least. Again, Fareed, it's a big country. It's very hard to generalize about the public opinion without scientific polling for obvious reasons.
Well, you give us a very good picture, Cindy. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.